Hello, hello, hello. Testing, testing. I got to turn myself up a little bit. Yeah, how does that sound, Henry?
I think it sounds pretty good.
Excellent. Okay. Hello, everyone, all listeners of Principia Internet Radio. This is Christian Blaney, and you're listening to Christian Blaney's Corner. It's just a talk radio show / podcast, depending on what you want to call it. I don't really think there's much of a difference anymore. Where I bring on whoever the heck I want and whoever the heck will come and just talk to him for an hour. Henry's got to go at around 12:30, so we're going to get as much talking in as we can. But he's always been a fun guy for me to talk to, so hopefully you guys will enjoy the conversation. So what's up, Henry? How you feeling?
Nothing. Already off to a good start. I'm doing pretty good.
Good, man. You asked, what... actually, let me, I guess, have you introduce yourself the way you want to be introduced. So what are some things that you're into? What's your life like? What's up?
Well, my life is pretty uneventful right now.
As everyone's is.
So, I mean...
But you're a student.
I am a student.
Yeah.
I go to school here. Some of you guys may have seen me around.
He's a cool guy. Wearing good clothes.
I wear good clothes, I guess.
Not necessarily super expensive clothes. You're just fashionable. Does that make sense? Maybe they're super expensive. I haven't checked. I haven't asked you.
Some are. Most of it's just H&M.
Yeah.
Fast fashion.
Fast fashion.
Healthy for the environment.
I feel like every H&M shirt or set of pants that any of my friends have gotten is just torn itself apart really quickly.
I mean,
do you have that problem?
My stuff's lasted.
Yeah.
I mean, I go into it with the mindset that it's not going to last that long, but it's not good for the environment, so I don't like buying it. But at the same time,
it's not good for the environment, Henry.
No.
Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, no. Fast fashion.
Terrible
for the environment.
Terrible for the environment.
I don't like supporting it, but the clothing looks cool, so.
Yeah, isn't that weird how people make that sacrifice so easily? I'm not dogging on you. I do it too.
I mean, yeah, it's something I don't really think about it that much.
Yeah.
So.
I've been thinking about it more and more, just less because I think the world's going to end in the next 10 years, but more because I know that there is some kind of limit to the earth. And until we get a society, get our society to start thinking a little more into the stars, we're probably going to have to be working with what we got. There's a quote that I wrote on my phone a while ago, and it was humans aren't really that stupid. We're just not really meant to live in one atmosphere. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think we're just a wasteful species because that's what we had to do to survive. We had to go for, the plenty. Does that make sense? And so switching back into a really low usage society might be a little difficult for a lot of us.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. I feel like that it's important to have that mindset of trying not to waste. Obviously,
yeah.
I feel like most people agree with that now. But I feel like it's also, I don't know if it's a cultural thing. I don't know if that's what you're getting at or not, but
I think it's a evolutionary thing.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. Are you a Darwin guy? Do you like thinking about that stuff?
I think about social Darwinism a lot.
What is social Darwinism?
Well, I mean, it takes the concept of survival of the fittest, but in a social construct type of deal.
Guys that are unattractive tend to be funnier because that's how they get ahead in the social world.
Sure, yeah.
That kind of situation.
Have to, compensating. And
yeah.
That kind of stuff.
Let me get a chair. Yeah, go ahead.
I guess this is my show now.
Yeah, it's your show. I'm just putting I did this last episode.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, that's much more comfortable for me.
Yeah. No, I'd say that for sure. I don't really know how to describe it, but
no, I mean, if you say what I said makes sense, then I think we got it down, right?
Yeah, I think I'd say what you said makes sense. So.
Sick. Well, cool. Before the podcast, we talked about like, okay, what are we going to talk about? What should we do? Because we have no problem having like long conversations regularly, like in the car and passing the concourse, whatever. But long, I guess 30-minute only, so it's not actually that bad. It's going to fly by. Conversation is a little different. So, one thing I asked you was like, okay, what's something in society that you think is a little funky or like we shouldn't do, like doesn't really make sense, but we do it anyway?
Well, I hate social media, actually. I feel like it's
But
really,
you have it.
but
I hate it too, but I don't have it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I feel like for some of it, I need to use it for like I'm trying to like expand my photography. So I need to use it for that.
Mm-hmm.
I need to use it for like my clubs on campus that I'm involved in. I run a couple pages for those. My personal one.
What clubs are you in?
Jam Factory. I'm the president, and I was the president of the recording studio club, but now I'm just kind of in it.
Cool.
So I mean, like it's essential for those, but just like how it's used, I don't like it that much, I guess.
What part of it do you not like?
The whole like snapshot of the best parts of people's lives, and that's the only thing that you see. So like if I go and I look at somebody's page, it's only going to be what they want me to see about their life. Like they don't show you all of it. And I feel like it's really unhealthy for people just to only see the curated parts that people want you to see.
Yeah, because then it makes your life seem like less happy,
right,
or less like super eventful.
Right, like you have that like fear of missing out type of
Yeah.
thing. Like you see like, oh, this is like some dude at like a beach and then some music festival or something, and you're like, oh, I'm not going to the beach, or I'm not going to music festivals. And it's like it's the first time that guy probably done it in like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, it's not only you're seeing the like snapshots of one person's life, like the best parts of it. What you're seeing, like depending on how many people you follow, like 500 people's best sections of their lives, and so it's just like this super condensed mass of goodness in people's lives that they want to share to the world. But yeah, it seems a little counterproductive. It feels like it makes people on average sadder.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that.
It's crazy that it's gone this far. You know what I mean? Like that there hasn't been really that much regulation on it. The only regulation is stuff that like laws that we already had, for the most part.
Yeah, no,
Like a 6-year-old is allowed to operate it.
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, like technically terms of service, it's supposed to be like 13 and older or something.
13's still young, man.
It's still young.
But the thing is, like, there's nothing like you don't have to have like an ID for social media.
Right.
Yeah, you can. If you're 6, you can just say you're 13. Like, what the heck is stopping you, man?
Exactly. No.
Yeah. Same with porn sites. Just like, are you 18? Yep. Here we go. Like
Yeah.
that's how it's been for decades.
No, for sure. I feel like I don't know. I don't feel like it needs to be regulated. I don't know if that's what you were getting at. But
No. But if you think it should be regulated, I'm down to listen to that argument. Or listen to why it shouldn't be regulated.
Yeah, no, I don't. I mean, I'm very pro First Amendment, so like, I don't feel like it needs to be regulated because it's just like use it as a platform to speak your ideas.
Does the First Amendment apply to? When does the First Amendment start applying? Like age-wise, is there some kind of limit to that? Because I can't imagine like a 5-year-old being silenced and like it becoming like a social issue or a legal issue.
Especially with a lot of social platforms now, there's a lot of ambiguity in how they allow certain speech and silence certain speech, and it's been a conversation among conservatives specifically because they feel like they're censored. I'm
not going to bring it up a third time in the show in depth, but the Gina thing, right? Gina Carello, I think. I got her name wrong twice.
Carano,
the
Mandalorian,
thank you. The Mandalorian girl, yeah.
Yeah, the thing that's interesting with that, I mean, is she gets censored for opinions that, I mean, like most rational people wouldn't agree with. And then she gets fired from her show, but her co-star, the guy who actually plays the Mandalorian, Pedro Pascal,
fantastic actor,
made a similar comparison earlier just the opposite direction and has had no repercussion because Disney is a liberal studio, obviously, so they're going to support.
What did he say? What do you mean the opposite direction?
Well, so she was like she was comparing something stupid like mask mandates to like Nazism or something.
I think it was like conservative speech being censored in the same way speech was censored by people that were put into the Holocaust. Right.
It was some like wild claim that
it wasn't that wild. It was the way it was structured could have been structured way better. Like the argument could have been presented in a much less controversial way. But the idea actually is like validated in what happened to her.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could see that part of it.
That's how I've been seeing it.
Yeah, I didn't really think it didn't make that much sense to me when I read it.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was back in the summer when we had like the protests and stuff. He was making some sort of similar comparison to Nazis, but not like pro-conservative. It was a very like liberal take on it, and then nothing happened on it. And Twitter didn't do anything, but Disney obviously took the stance of this speech was right and this speech was wrong because they fired one of them for making that comparison, and one of them still the lead of the show.
What is this a move for? Because when you're a corporation that large, do you want to turn down your mic a tiny bit?
Which one am I?
It's the leftist thing.
This one?
Yeah, just a little bit. Thank you. Yeah. Make sure you can hear yourself and you're getting to the red line. But sorry, what was I going to say? What was I talking about? Well, yeah, when you're that big of like a studio, like that big of a corporation like Disney, pretty much every major decision you're doing that's going to be sent into PR, right, is like going to be some kind of strategic move, I think. In some sense, even if it's like basic logic to do. But I feel like there's more people that would be like, yo, what is going on? If they heard about it, then like, oh yeah, no, she should like definitely be fired for that one post and that one story that not everyone is going to agree with.
Well, so there's a couple things there. It wasn't her first time making very pro-conservative comments. Like she's always been very vocal on the internet, and it even still is vocal after she got fired. She said like, I'm not sorry, pretty much.
Yeah.
And so I mean, it wasn't like the first time that she had said something, and people were like trying to get her fired for the last 6 months, I think, pretty much. Since the second season came out. But the other thing to consider is that I think it's Kathleen Kennedy is the president of Lucasfilms.
Okay.
And she's like an extreme social activist, very pro-liberal, very like pushes like a lot of good things, like a lot of diversity and stuff. But at the same time, I feel like that has a lot of the reason to do with why Pedro Pascal doesn't get fired for saying something very similar to what Gina did, just the opposite direction on the political spectrum.
Yeah.
Because one of them agrees with the president and then one of them doesn't.
Yeah.
So I feel like, I don't know where I'm going with this, but I feel like, I mean.
No, I follow your train of thought. Like your logic does track. I know what you mean. One thing that I was also thinking of, I will admit that it's possible that I'm just overcomplicating this, and it could have just been Disney needed like a reason to fire this chick because like they didn't really know how they were going to incorporate her in the next season. They were like,
well, she was actually going to like be getting her own show spinoff, I think.
What?
Yeah.
Wait, what do you mean?
The I think it's called the Order of the Republic or something, some show that they were talking about developing. I think was going to be about she was going to be on it at least.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
But the thing that I didn't understand is how it was like celebrated that she got fired. From like a lot of liberal point of views, they were like, yeah, we did this. And it was like,
yeah,
I don't really agree with like celebrating getting somebody out of their job like that, because like I don't feel like what she did was that bad.
I agree.
And I feel like it's difficult to argue that it was, I don't know. I feel like the like whole concept of like dangerous speech doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because any rational person should be able to sit there and be like, this person's saying this thing that's kind of outlandish, and I'm not going to take it seriously.
Well, like one of the best examples against that is like the KKK, for example. So like not a lot of rational people are going to be involved in it, but there's going to be some people. And if those people are put together and they have some like semblance of agency and power within their communities, and they can make especially black people pretty scared. Like I have a friend back at home, and she's African American, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, she's African American. And she and her mom doesn't let her drive into like a place a little north of where I live, which has a KKK spot. So we go around that area if we're gonna go north. So, but that's because those people are around because of our free speech laws. We can't really do anything about it until they do something, like I guess, substantial, and then we can. But we can't get rid of the group because it's just people like assembling.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, I don't agree with the stances of the KKK, right?
Are you going to say you like the KKK?
I'm not going to.
Is that what you're going to do, Henry?
I'm not going to go there.
You aren't going to do that in the studio?
That's not what I'm going to say. I'm going to say that with the First Amendment, to be able to classify like what would be counted as like the whole concept of hate speech, like this, we're going off on a tangent here, but the whole concept of hate speech I don't get, because like who has the right to say that like this is hate speech but this isn't? Because it's going to be subjective.
Yeah.
Like who's going to have the right to be able to say that? You can't say it's going to be the government, because if you look at social media now, everyone's saying that everybody in our government's a white supremacist. So are you going to trust everybody who's a white supremacist to make the laws on what's hate speech and what isn't hate speech?
I don't know.
Are you going to put together a diversity council with like everybody?
Hate crimes is a similar thing. I remember learning about them like in high school.
Well, hate crimes are different.
Well, it's a similar thing where it's not strictly defined. Like there's no real good definition for it. There's a lot of things you can put under the category of a hate crime.
Well, so the thing that
comes... But it adds a sentence. Sorry, go ahead.
The thing that comes down to like where the line is drawn, at least for me and for, I think legally for a lot of people, is like the call to action, right? Because like you can say that you don't like a certain race or something and like whatever, and that's gross, but it's not illegal, and like you can say that. But if you say you're going to like do something against these, or
like, hey guys, let's go kill these black people, that's inciting.
Right. That's then a call to action, and that's where like the line gets drawn.
Yeah.
And that's where I think a lot of people need to like figure that out, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't feel like I have a really good see like I admit that there's some things that I think are dumb. Not dumb, but like I can't relate to them being a trouble in my life. Like for example, both you and I may not be that sensitive to stuff like that, but there's a lot of different reasons that could be. But for whatever reason, we're not sensitive to that. I know people that would be sensitive to that kind of thing, and the hard thing to do, like the solution is to be less sensitive. That's how we're that way. That's how we're cool with it. But that's like a super hard thing to teach, like teaching people how to be sensitive. Like some people just, a good example, and one of the reasons I figured this out was some people don't like to be like athletically like physical with someone else. Like some people really, really dislike the feeling of wrestling or someone else manipulating their body in a way that they don't like. And I don't feel that at all. I love that. That's play for me. And so it's just two completely different sets of humans that are both humans, but they're just working in the same society under the same laws. And so obviously there's definitely laws about like manipulating someone's body in a way that they don't want to if they don't consent to that. Not sexually even, just in any way. But in a similar way, like, but there's not really a way to like teach them to be sensitive. They have to really throw them into the fire, but you can't force people into the fire. That might burn off some sensitivity. Does that make sense? Like it's really tough to teach that kind of thing without forcing someone into a situation they don't want to be in.
I don't follow.
some people are more sensitive,
Right.
right?
Okay.
So, you and I are not sensitive in that way. And this could either be because we were put into some situation when we were developing that made us not really too sensitive to that kind of thing. Either we didn't even go through it, and so it doesn't register as like a bad thing to us. Like if someone calls me a cracker, for example, like that's not a good word to use against the white person, but I don't care about that at all. But it also doesn't like have any history in my life for me to like attach it to.
Yeah.
But
No,
like, you know,
I'd agree with that. I feel like, I don't know, I feel like it's easy for me to come up to like be like, oh, like
just be less sensitive.
hate speech and whatever, but and like be like not really understanding. But at the same time, I'm not a member of the communities that get marginalized by speech, so I don't really know what it's like.
Exactly. That's
So,
literally all I'm saying. It's just we don't feel it in the same way, and so it's hard for us to have like a really good take on that thing, because we just want it to be our way. Like if it was our way, I mean, people would just kind of be talking how they were, and then if they're being blatant racist, they're probably going to lose their job and a lot of other things in their life.
That's true.
Because everyone has a phone now.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. I recently started working at Five Guys, and the GM of the store was like, make sure that you're like careful about what you put on your social media. I was like, this is a weird conversation to be getting into, because like it's Five Guys. It's just like a regular job. It's not like a crazy like super public eye job. But apparently like a couple weeks before I got hired, somebody at the store had put something on their social media that was like really bad, and apparently the cops were even involved.
Whoa, like what? Do you know?
He didn't
ever find
he didn't
out?
clarify. But
Did
he ended
you
up
sniff
getting
around a little bit?
No.
Dang.
But he ended up getting like arrested and fired from
Wow.
Five Guys for
Really?
something he put on social media. So I'm sure it had to be some sort of like inciting violence type of deal.
I'm selling heroin.
Or it
Come
could
to
be,
my address.
Could be something with drugs, I suppose. But the police were involved, and I was like, okay.
That's interesting.
But so I mean, it's interesting. I don't know where I'm going with this, but it was interesting that. Yeah.
It was interesting.
It was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that's a common thing. Social media is like a huge. It's like for some people, for some archetype of person, it's like a risk, but because they want to be super outspoken about what they really believe in. Like for example, the research that I have seen makes me believe that Johns Hopkins is doing a good thing by researching the medical benefits of psychedelic drugs. I think that's an interesting field of science to go into, and so I'm not against that. But there's some people that would hear me say that and be like, oh, dang, he's a super hippie. He thinks that people should research plants. And their like effect on the human brain. So, yeah.
I mean, I've always been pretty pro that type of research.
Yeah. Well, listen, it's a part of science that's just been taken out of the social and scientific realm for so long.
I mean, no. I mean, like especially like what they're doing in Portland right now. I mean, in
Or
Oregon.
Oh yeah, like just decriminalizing all drugs.
Decriminalizing.
Mm-hmm.
So they have legalized weed, and it's taxed by the government,
Mm-hmm.
and then they've decriminalized all the other drugs. So if you get caught with drugs, it's like fines or something. It's not like you don't get arrested, you don't get put in jail, which I'm totally for, because I feel like arresting people for non-drug offenses.
Non-violent drug offenses.
Non-violent drug offenses.
Non-drug offenses.
Yeah.
Yeah, non-violent drug offenses.
Non-violent drug offenses. I feel like arresting people for that doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Well, it's a huge percent of the population in the jails. That's just for non-violent drug offenses.
Right. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because like you're punishing people that are most likely addicted if they're not a drug dealer. You're punishing addicts.
Yeah, that's
by putting them in jail, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
never going to pass in New York. The prison industrial complex is too strong.
Andrew Cuomo. What a guy.
What a guy. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, it's good that we're talking about this, because we're two perfectly rational, non-turbo hippie people that just think it makes sense to like do research in areas where, improvement could be seen.
Yeah. But I mean, on the realm of the Portland thing, I mean, the Oregon thing, I refer to Oregon as Portland.
It's just Portland.
It's just
one gigantic city. Everything's scaled up.
they use the tax money from the legalized marijuana to pay for programs that you get are required to be put into to help with addiction if you have multiple drug offenses.
Is the state of Oregon transparent with where taxed money is going?
This is something I read. I might be wrong.
Okay. Because that's really awesome if that's the case.
In theory, it sounds really cool. I don't know if that's what's happening, but that's what I read like in a couple places. Sure. And they weren't like, I don't know how reliable the sources were. So
we're also really new into this.
Right. So feel free to like do research on your own time, I suppose. But I feel like that's a really cool idea. And I think it's something that they said they do in Portugal.
Brazil. I think it was Brazil. It might have been Portugal. Maybe I'm just getting the language and the.
I think it was Portugal.
Very possibly.
That they do something similar to that, and I think it makes a lot of sense to do that because rehabilitation, I feel like, is more productive than discipline and punishment. Yeah.
I mean, they've been really successful statistically with that. I guess I thought it was Brazil, but it's actually Portugal. So yeah, what I've heard is that they've been it's worked. It's worked for a lot of people. A lot less people are in jail for that kind of thing. A lot more people are getting help for it. In America, we have a really weird situation where we have had about 10 years of like abuse of a lot of chemicals that pharmaceutical companies are selling and doctors are prescribing. And they were doing that to a rate where it was a bit irresponsible. They weren't really tracking who was getting their prescription refills when, and this was happening for a little while. So we might have we just have a different association with what drugs are and what they aren't. Like we think SSRIs totally make sense and are good drugs to do because they don't make you think different. But then if you talk about, Ibogaine actually makes tons of sense for me getting not addicted to heroin. And that's like a deeply, what's it called? What are mushrooms? Psychedelic. It's an extremely psychedelic substance.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. I mean, the thing, it's also just like perspective too. I mean, like my grandparents are I think they're pretty anti-drugs, but I think it's also like it's definitely like a generational thing because like you grow up in a time that's.
Are they Christian Scientists?
One of them is, one of them isn't.
Okay. But that doesn't have to do with it?
No, it's definitely like more like a political thing.
Gotcha. So go ahead. I cut you off.
And I think that, I mean, if you look at like a lot of like the laws around marijuana and other drugs, marijuana's punishment level is a lot higher. And if you look at the history behind it, it's completely racially motivated.
Sure.
And I don't feel like it's, especially in like the society we live in now, it makes a lot of sense to have the punishment of I think a lot of people agree with this at this point, except for conservatives. So there's a decent amount of conservatives in lawmaking positions, not conservatives. Young conservatives are pretty on board with it, as far as I can tell.
Yes,
but like
absolutely,
the lawmaking conservatives are still very against weed being legal, which doesn't make. Well,
do you know why?
I don't. But
lobbying.
Oh yeah,
lobbying is allowed.
Lobbying is allowed, but I think it's also. I mean, some of it's. I'm pretty sure still racially motivated because when you look at the age of the average like congressman, they're like 68 or something ridiculous, and when you're that old, you're set in your ways, and you grew up in a time where racism was more prevalent and pretty much encouraged. So you're probably still pretty racist because you just grew up in that time, and like your beliefs are set when you're pretty much this age between like 12 to like 30.
Dang, I gotta start experiencing more things then.
Well, I mean,
I gotta go to every country, understand all cultures. So by the time I'm 30, I'm just a god.
That's a rough estimate. From what I've read, like a lot of like your like beliefs and ideas stem from a young age, and then you get like set in your ways, and that's why like the term like boomer.
It's 12:29.
I see that.
Are you gonna be late?
I'll be okay.
Okay.
The term like boomer is thrown around more so as like an insult to like being set in your ways.
Yeah, that's true.
So, and I think that stems a lot from the fact that a lot of the old people in this country right now are set in their ways from pre-1990.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of the laws regarding a lot of these drugs and stuff are purely racially motivated at this point, because that's just what was normal for people in the 1950s and 1960s, even though it's not now.
Yeah.
But people haven't really changed that are in those positions because they were young enough to have those ideas ingrained into them at that age. And now that they're old, they still have the same ideas and they're not that willing to change.
Part of that must be because of miseducation, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's
How much longer can you go?
like 15 minutes.
Dang, nice. We get another 15 minutes of Henry Soney, everyone. That's great. But yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with miseducation, right?
Absolutely. I mean,
of no fault of their own. That's the
right.
thing.
I mean, somebody had to educate, because there's miseducation, and then just like lack of education led to a lot of that situations in like the 50s and 60s. Like,
yes.
So I mean, like Jim Crow laws, obviously somebody had to do those. So I mean, regardless of whether or not what am I trying to say here?
This happens all the time on the podcast, man. Don't worry about it. Jim Crow laws, weed.
Jim Crow laws, weed. I don't think the two things are not connected.
They're not connected. You're right.
Yeah, no, regardless of whether or not
there are people making those laws.
Right, yeah, somebody had to make those laws.
Gotcha.
Right? And so some people had malicious intent with those, obviously, because...
You ever watched Reefer Madness, 1936?
No.
That is a fun movie to watch with your friends, man. It is a propaganda piece made by the U.S. government, or funded almost entirely, I'm pretty sure, by the U.S. government. I theorized by the leader of the FBI that said, paraphrase, it's an atrocity. What's the word for something that's like? Oh, it's an abomination for a colored man and a white woman to like be married or something like that. I'm like, oh, it's a good guy. And considering weed was like pretty much only in Mexican and black communities at the time, like this was the time where society was starting to kind of form together. Like there were still obviously like Italian neighborhoods and Irish towns and stuff like that, but like people were starting to come in, and this FBI director was like, you know, it's a really good way to keep people out of your town, make everyone think they're crazy. And so the movie is just like there's this one guy at a party on weed, and he's just like crazy eyes, and he's playing the piano really fast, and he's like, "Hey, Susan, how you doing?" And he looks like an absolute maniac. When in like reality, if anyone's watched like, I don't know, a stoner movie like Pineapple Express, very common, you know that it's not that kind of thing. Like they're not maniacs, they're just a little silly maybe and sleepy sometimes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean,
but yeah, sorry, all I was saying, yeah, it's propaganda, bro. Like it's so much so much miseducation has happened in America's history in the past, even just like 50 years.
Yeah. I mean, look at the CIA with black communities and cocaine.
Ooh, please tell me. What happened?
Well, the crack epidemic.
Tell me the history of it. I know a little bit, but it seems like you know more than me.
I think it's considered a conspiracy theory, although a lot of evidence supports the fact that it actually happened, is that the CIA essentially was like dealing drugs. I forget.
Yes, I have heard about this.
Right.
Yeah.
The CIA would deal drugs, and then it became like this huge ordeal. I don't know the details of it.
I don't remember why they were doing it. I just remember that they were doing it.
Right. I don't remember like the context. I just know that it was happening.
Yeah.
And that they were dealing crack, and it affected black communities very negatively.
Yes. Really,
and
Henry?
That's all I know about it.
It's funny that crack and cocaine are like the same thing, but we just call them two different things.
Well, because I mean, I think it's referred. Well,
crack is like
a crystallized version.
No, it's the same. It's this exact same chemical. It's just crack is sometimes like By the way, thank you, fellow Christian scientists, for being cool on like a little history of drugs rant. Like, why not? Times are changing, I guess. But crack and cocaine are the same chemical compound. Crack is just sometimes like cut. You know what I mean? Like with flour or whatever you want to cut it with. I don't know. I don't make crack. I have no idea. That's not in my like realm of experience
Christian
whatsoever.
Blaney's a drug dealer.
Yeah, Christian Blaney makes crack. Soundbite that if you can. Put that everywhere.
I mean, I just know it was like a big issue.
Yeah.
And it was like ended up like affecting minority communities pretty severely.
Even more than they already were, man. They just came out of slavery like not
Right.
too long ago.
Right. I want to say it was like totally just like an experimental thing.
Really?
Well,
they did that with acid.
Right. I mean, they did that with acid to people too, to like try to figure out like mind control. Like there's crazy like MK Ultra.
Well, MK Ultra is a great topic to get into if you're down with like CIA. It's not a conspiracy theory because this is proven.
They declassified the documents.
They declassified MK Ultra.
I did a report on MK Ultra.
Dude, it's so good to talk to someone that knows stuff about this.
I read the documents and it's wild.
You read the actual documents?
Yes.
I haven't read any of the actual documents. I've just seen summaries of them.
It's wild, some of the stuff they did. Like they would just like unknowingly put people on acid.
Yep.
And they wouldn't know.
Send them to a brothel.
And just do crazy stuff like that. And it's like the stuff that they did was just insane.
But it's important to know about these things in American history because you got to understand that like not every part of the government's on your side. Like the government is just as shady as some deep parts of like
a lot of people say like the CIA is almost like a criminal organization, and
it is. It is. It's done so many criminal things, but it's just sponsored by the government, so it's okay. Right? It's all good.
I love conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
Even though they're not like.
I like the ones that aren't off the chain.
Off the chains. Alex Jones, dude.
He's great. He's right sometimes.
Well,
that's what I like.
I like listening to Alex Jones just because like it's such a different perspective.
Yeah.
He's not. I
would agree.
It's such a like a lot of people like give him hate for having like gross points of views, like obviously like the
Sandy Hook thing.
That was not,
okay, but hear me out. He also exposed Bohemian Grove. He called the Jeffrey Epstein thing like a decade before anything came out. The one thing that he isn't down with, though, he's not down with QAnon.
Interesting. I figured he would be.
No,
but
he thinks that he's like, no, there's no evidence for that.
Yeah, no, I love Alex Jones, even though he's just like
he's crazy,
insane.
He's crazy,
but
there's a place for him in the world.
I love listening to him talk just because it's so fascinating.
Yeah, he thinks a lot faster than me, but that's probably because he just has so much more information in his head than me. Sometimes I think I talk slowly, like more often than not, because I don't, things come to me at a slower rate than Alex Jones, where it's just like, all right, the world might be flat. Also, your neighbor's an alien.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, like oh man, circling back to the like censoring of speech, man.
Please do.
He was on the Joe Rogan podcast. Like Joe Rogan had him on, which was interesting.
Oh, he's been on 3 times. 4 times.
This most recent time, what was interesting is because he's been deplatformed off of pretty much any social media you can think of, like Twitter, YouTube, Facebook.
I was just talking about this with Darren, actually.
Everything. He's off of it. But then he was allowed to be on Joe Rogan's podcast, which was put up on YouTube and Spotify.
Not on YouTube.
It was on YouTube because that's where I watched it.
Maybe this was like this.
This was right before that he went exclusive.
That episode, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I watched it.
And everybody was pissed about it because I can't believe you're platforming this man who said that like Sandy Hook was faked and like said all these awful things. I can't believe you're like allowing this dangerous speech on this platform. And it's like
Joe Rogan must have said in that episode 1,000 times, like, okay, hang on, Alex.
Right. If you actually watch the episode, Joe Rogan sits there and he fact checks a lot of the stuff that he says.
Jamie, look that up.
Yeah.
Look that up. Hang on, Alex. Hang on, Jamie. What is there anything there?
Right. And it's such a I love that episode because it's just like if you don't allow people to have those ridiculous perspectives public, like you get more. I think you get more situations like the KKK when you have like the secret, like groups of people that have their echo chamber. Because like if you're censoring people, I guess this is my final point because I'm gonna have to duck out of here.
Sure.
But I feel like if you spend the time to try to censor people off of platforms, and you spend the time to try to control the speech that's given, as long as it's not a call to action, like as long as it's not violent, because I feel like that's where the line gets drawn for legally anyways, the call to action, which is like, let's go do something very illegal. And
do you want to do something really illegal with me, Henry?
I'm calling us to action.
Excellent.
I think that if you spend all that time to do that, then you're just going to create a worse society at the end of the day, because you don't have these opinions public, so they're going to be secret and they're going to develop, and you're going to have like more echo chamber. Because like if you have these people allowed to just put their opinions out there and have people like, man, like you're an idiot, like I feel like it's better at the end of the day to have that kind of a society to live in.
I'm thinking of all these changes that are happening in our society to whether or not they're getting me closer or further away from 1984. And I think that if we take Alex Jones out of the internet, we are closer to 1984.
Yeah, I feel like Alex Jones should have a platform just so you
agree.
can hear the ridiculous stuff that he says. And
yeah, does he have any platform?
No, I mean he's got his Infowars. That's
still like a website,
and that like conservative Facebook thing that people were like, oh, we need to take this down because conservatives are on it.
Yes, I keep on forgetting what it was called because I never used it, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean that's how much I know about what it is that I just know it's like the conservative Facebook.
That's how you know I'm not one of the Nazis.
Yeah, no, I'm not a white supremacist because don't know what that website was called.
True.
But I don't know, man. I feel like speech is important, and I don't feel like we should spend any time censoring speech.
No speech.
No speech should be censored unless it's a call to action.
Interesting.
Like the KKK, I don't agree with it. Nobody should agree with it. But as long as they're not having a call to action.
Or actively killing black people.
Yeah, well, that's part of the call. That's part of the call to action.
But that's the thing. Does that mean we should just get rid of the KKK if they're killing black people? Because they definitely have.
I mean, that's. I mean, yeah, because like you're having an action.
Yeah.
Like speech and action need to be separate. You could say you're inciting violence, but if you're not having a call to action, like I don't know how you'd classify that, because you can like I don't know, because if you, yeah, I'm
gonna try to get someone on about that. See if. Ooh, Billy Miller. He might know something along those lines.
Because like the call to action stuff, I mean, I don't know. Everyone's like, oh, this incites violence and this is hate speech, and it's like, who are you to say that it is, and who are you to say that it isn't? Like,
sure,
speech is speech.
I get it. Ladies and gentlemen, Henry Soney, speech is speech.
Speech is speech.
Thank you very much for being on, brother.
Yeah,
hopefully you're not too late to whatever you had to go to. But for the people that are late, just tell them to look up this episode on YouTube and they'll see what you were up to.
Yeah.
All right, man. Peace. Yeah. Bye-bye. I'm still here, everyone. Don't you worry. I'm not going away for another, what do we got, like 17 minutes-ish, more or less. Let's see. What do you guys want me to talk about? What would be fun to hear? Yeah, I would like to apologize to anyone that is not interested in like substances or medical research or anything along those lines, but I think it's part of our ever-changing world, and that I'm not interested in being blind to things that are going to come out soon, or are definitely coming into society now. There's like a psychedelic resurgence, I think, from the media that I've been seeing everywhere, similar to like the 1960s or 70s. Not saying that those times were necessarily great for everyone, because they obviously weren't, but but I think there was a lot of lumping together of a lot of different things, like substances with culture, how those might affect action or ways of thought. And I guess we're pulling those files out of the dirt and swiping them off and seeing if any really smart people can find good uses for them. Like, for example, if you want to look something up, just check out what I think it's John Hopkins doing this particular study, but it's how mushrooms can positively affect people that have PTSD, and so that's just, I guess, go off that wave if you're interested in the topic. I think any way we can help people with issues that they're having in their life, especially from situations that weren't really that much their fault. I think we should help them as a society. Another thing, I want to talk to like an economist on this, or on either side of the debate, on the idea of like free healthcare, like many countries have over the world. There's arguments for it and against it, but I'm personally for it. Oh, I should probably make myself just this screen. There we go. That's better. Dang. Maybe I think I just said something that I don't even remember what I just said. I think I said, like, I'm not for it or against it. But, okay, scratch everything I said in the past like 5 minutes. I think that universal healthcare, state-sponsored, you just walk into the clinic, you give them your information, it's on the government's tab. I think that's a good idea. And I'm not talking about just like getting your leg broken or your arm broken and getting that subsidized. I mean, not subsidized, but like dealt with. I'm talking also about like mental health diagnoses or talks with your therapist. I recently I was on Reddit fairly recently, and I saw like a post that said something about like just how there's a lot of issues with not having free healthcare when it comes to diagnosing people, because if I want to help the people around me, like let's say I have bipolar disorder. Let's just say that hypothetically, and I'm having symptoms of bipolar disorder, and there's people around me that say like, hey, you need to talk to someone, but I don't have that much money, and it costs money to talk to someone, especially if you don't have good insurance. And so you're probably not going to talk to someone unless it's really, really important to you and them that you do, and then you can probably figure something out. But it's not as accessible as I think it should be. There's also a lot of people trying to become therapists and psychiatrists. So it's a growing field, and for that reason, it's becoming less expensive, but it's still a price. And as long as something is a price, they're going to be a lot less likely to use it. Like that's one of the things with news and media, which I heard from the CS Monitor that they are working on individual article, like purchasing, so you don't have to like have a subscription to read a CS Monitor article, which is fantastic. I think that's exactly the direction all news should go. So that's a little update on that. So if CS Monitor is working on it, probably sure New York Times is working on it. But anyway, it's the same thing. Like, because the news, like a lot of news is free, a lot of information is totally free. You just pay for it by being the product, by being the viewer of ads. That's how it's all paid for. But some companies don't want to work with that. Like New York Times doesn't want to work with that. So they, or not solely advertisements. Yeah, so they make it so you have to subscribe. I like the New York Times. They're probably my favorite newspaper overall. They can get a little to one side or the other. I've seen posts on both, but it's more frequently left-sided. It's okay. I can translate that into middle ground, but I don't want to have to do that all the time. Sorry, that was off topic. I think that I should be able to buy an individual article, but it's not free, so I'm probably not going to read it first. I'm probably going to read something on GameSpot Like, let's say if it's about like a video game release, I'm probably gonna read something on GameSpot, or to be honest, I shouldn't have used that example because I don't really read into a lot of video games. It's pretty rare. But what was I gonna say? I don't know. Now that Henry's gone, my train of thought is, I was relying on him for my train of thought. Dang, missed the station. Anyway, if something's free, people are going to use it. If it's not, they're less likely to use it. And in America, that means that we get less diagnosis on mental illness. And considering we are probably the country with the most guns available to the most amount of people, we should probably get accurate medical diagnosis, because your medical diagnosis has to do with whether or not you should own a gun. And if that's just made part of the culture, then in maybe, 10 years, we'll see pretty immediate or pretty direct effects of that, right? So, I don't know. It doesn't really take away your freedom too much with that kind of thing. But then I guess if it is taken care of by the government, then you won't have an excuse to be like, I don't want to get tested. Your government, your company, like let's say your what's something that requires some kind of clearance? I don't know anything about this subject, but I'm gonna pretend that I do. So let's say that you're working in a military base, and that's all you know how to do. You work at Fort Detrick, and you're super good at working with extremely toxic chemicals, but you've been diagnosed with schizophrenia, and it's not that bad, but there's definitely symptoms if you're not taking medication. Now, let's say that you use schizophrenia, but you think you can handle it on your own. But since the government just made things totally legal, not legal, totally free, then Fort Detrick is being like, hey, you know what? Since things are free, let's make sure that we have medical records on everyone. Don't worry, it's going to be like HIPAA approved, and it's going to be secure. We just want to make sure that we have the right people on the job. But you don't know how to do anything else, and you have schizophrenia. And so you're like, oh, dang, they're going to find out I have schizophrenia. And now I'm going to, and like, if this psychiatrist like sniffs up on it, I might not have a job anymore. The task that I knew how to do, that probably won't transfer that well to too many other businesses that are looking for jobs, it's going to be gone. And so I'm going to have to be back at square one with the majority of my job experience, because now the thing that I'm best at, I actually can't do. So maybe I don't know anything about schizophrenia when it comes to like the medication of it, but I can't imagine you're using soft meds for schizophrenia. Not saying it's all the same thing, but because everyone's schizophrenia is different if you have it. But hopefully you understand the point that I'm making. With making more things free, the government, has more space to stick its fingers in, hand in. I don't know the best way to put that at all. Let's see how much time we got. 12:53. Let's see. Normally, someone texts me during my show, and since it's just me and I'm not really having conversation, I feel like it's okay for me to be on this. I've kind of made like a soft rule that I don't want really too much electronics on my show, but now I'm just like, yeah, it's okay. So I have my phone out now. I'm going to go through my notes really quick. Oh yeah, but what I was going to say is people normally text me during my show saying like, oh, I like that thing that you said. Oh, that's so fun that you're having this guest, like whatever, stuff like that. It feels good, but I didn't get anything today. So, which is totally okay. I'm not saying people need to listen to my show and text me. Sometimes it's better that it didn't. It's just sometimes I open up my phone and I'm like, oh, dang, is someone going to critique something that I said? Or is like, oh, it's like someone saying, that's not actually what communism is. Or something along those lines. But I have been writing down pretty much every like weird thought that I've had. And oh my gosh, I've been constantly writing about thought animals. like this fake idea that I didn't come up with. I think I first heard it from Duncan Trussell, who's someone in media. If you look up Duncan Trussell, 2 S's, 2 L's, you'll find him. But it's just this idea that I talked about before in the podcast, where it's like, how do I put this? Thoughts, like ideas, are animals, and they're floating everywhere. They're all around us, and so they fly through your brain or your consciousness, wherever that is seated. Whether you believe that is a spiritual place or directly just a physical place, I'm not going to argue with you on that because I have no idea. But it flies through your receptors for these thoughts, and you get the thought, and then if maybe the thought's a thought that and initially you want to say all these thoughts, you want to put them into the world, but obviously you can't say every thought. Like if I'm walking down in the square of New York City, and I'm feeling like aggressive that day, I can't just say like, man, I'm feeling aggressive today, because people are gonna be like, dang, this guy's a lunatic, but I'm gonna stay away from him. And so society, and it's not a bad thing. I think this is necessary to have a good a civil society in what I know, like based off of the civil societies that I'm aware of. You got to hold back things that you're saying. Like my dad said, part of being a man is being able to control what you do and say, or like being aware of it so that you don't harm other people. And so I think about that a lot, and I think it was a very important lesson that all, especially men, should be taught, because we have physical agency in the world, as well as we should have equal agency to women, but it seems like it's not totally there yet. I'm not sure if I should say like it's a 60-40, but it's obvious that the thousands of years of women being second-class citizens in almost every like popular society, that's had an effect. So hopefully by the time I'm a little older, things will be much more 50-50 between how the sexes are treated. But right now, that's what's up. Yeah, men have physical agency, and so I think he was talking to me as another man. Just like, hey, if you're getting angry, you can't just like punch someone. It's not something you can do, because you're gonna feel angry. That's part of being on steroids for hard for like 30 years of your life, which is essentially what being a man is. So yeah, you're gonna feel weird in different points of your life. I recently read a paper, and it wasn't particularly good. I'm no scholar when it comes to writing, but sometimes I have ideas, and sometimes I want to put them on paper. And I was getting that feeling right as I had to write one of my midterms for actually the class that Cameron Douglas. I hate that I said Douglas Cameron at the beginning of that podcast, because I know his name is Cameron Douglas. I've written out his name like a million times. Honestly, closer to like maybe 24 times, but I know his name is Cameron Douglas. Man, I'm so sorry, Cameron. That was weird. But I was actually in Cameron Douglas's class for this midterm, and he's my teacher for global atomic age, or professor for global atomic age. I'm still in high school. Not teachers anymore. But pretty much it was just about like whether or not nukes should be proliferated, like whether or not they should exist at all, like as an option for any country on the offensive side of the military, or if they okay, if we should get rid of them, or if they're actually a stabilizing force in our society. And so I made the argument that we should get rid of them, and I hope I conveyed this. I separated this from, I think that they are going to go away, because I don't think they're going to go away, considering our government has plans for them until, like, I think our calendar goes as far as 2035 for things that I'm aware of, at least. So new nuclear submarine coming in 2035. Get hyped. The new drop is coming out. Not for a while, though. I'll be 35 then. I'm thinking of shaving my hair very soon. Oh, dang. I have 20 seconds. Man, I'll have to pick this up another time. Thinking of shaving my hair soon, so maybe the next time you see me on this podcast, I won't have any of this stuff. Not because I think it's bad, it's just inconvenient. So, thank you very much. And have a great day. Spread some love and some joy even. That's always good. Tell someone you love them. All right. Bye-bye.